Hello, and welcome back to a new video. My name is Varun, and today I am joined with Andrew, one of our team's programmers. He is here to talk about the basics of Java and give an introduction on this programming language that you might not know much about.
Hey, I'm Andrew, and programmer on Hermit Social Club.
All right, Andrew. So, first question, what is Java for the people that might not know about it?
Well, Java is a programming language. It's actually kind of an old one. It first came out in 1996, and since then it's actually become one of the most popular languages in use. It powers everything from small company applications to games like Minecraft and to first robots.
So, how did you get into it?
I originally got into Java about 6 or 7 years ago, mostly as kind of a hobby project to do like small little fun games. But I found that Java is like in programming in general could be used for a lot more than just small games. And eventually I signed up for FTC team and here I am.
FTC, obviously the transition between FLO and FTC is a big one, and programming is a big factor in that. So, coming from F, uh, coming from FLO, how do you think people should start learning Java?
Well, Java is kind of a well-rounded language. It's easier. It's like it's easier in terms of learning than I'd say languages like C++, which is another major language that's used in first. But it's definitely not the easiest language for a beginner. And coming from FLL, where you have block-based coding, it's like a really, really large jump. And one thing to know about Java is that it often has like a lot of concepts that like you will not learn when you start learning it, but you'll have to understand later. There's a lot of just rolling with it for a while. At its basis, Java is well, an object-oriented language, which essentially is just jargon for the concept of two things of classes and objects. So a class is kind of like a template essentially. It defines like what something can do. So for example, you could have like an arm class, and then in class you could like specify what an arm can do. In at the most basis though, like you don't a class doesn't necessarily have to specify what something does, but usually it would. So for example, if you the most basic program you can write in general is this thing called Hello World, and let me write it out for now. So as you can see, it looks pretty small, but Java's Hello World program is actually pretty large compared to other languages. Essentially, what this program does is it has a single function, and that is to print the words "Hello World" out, and then that's about it. But this is generally one of the most simplest programs you can do in not just Java, but really any other language. And you'll see here that that contains like a lot of things. It contains this thing which like declares a class. It contains this thing which declares something called main. And then finally it contains a line that actually prints out the word hello world. So in that sense, Java is complicated than other languages in the sense that there's a lot of stuff you need to do to get something basic running. So and when you learn Java, generally you'll kind of have to just hand roll most of this until you start learning some of the more advanced portions, which teach you why exactly these lines work. And yeah, that's pretty much it for describing that. So the first line here is what we call a class, which is something I said before. It's kind of like essentially it's kind of a template for holding logic that runs code. Inside here we have a thing called a method. A method is essentially like a block of stuff that runs code. So in terms of block-based programming, that would kind of be like a line of blocks across the screen. And in this case, we have exactly one block of code that just prints out the text "Hello World." So in FTC though, we generally you don't start with a main class. What you start is with a class known as an op mode, which essentially contains the logic for one of the op modes your robot can run in. So, for example, An example op mode would look something like this. So at the top, as you can see, it contains a lot of other stuff that a beginner to Java would not necessarily know, and essentially, I find that the best way to learn Java for FTC is specifically just to look at examples, because there are a lot of examples for in learning Java for FTC by other teams and by the first people themselves.
So, you're saying all this. Where would you recommend people to find resources on Java?
So yeah, Java is kind of really complicated. I kind of skimmed over some of the bigger parts, but the best places to learn is really just the internet. So, for example, one of the sites that I generally recommend is a site called the Java Tutorials. So, that's called docs.oracle.com and then slash java sc slash tutorial slash index.html. And essentially, what that is it's essentially a list of most of the basics of Java. For FTC, you'll mostly just need this first section, the section it calls cover basics, as well as maybe like one or two things down below. But generally, the basics will be enough to get you started to understand. And once you understand most of the basics, you can directly look at the FTC samples, which are available on the repository that holds them. So, for example, that would be located here, and there the examples are in the folder are in a folder called examples. I think. Yeah, they're called samples. And then essentially these are just all examples of how to do things in FTC. Everything from just starting to move a robot to taking input from sensors and to even using image recognition and AI and all that fun stuff. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff you can learn from here. And beyond these samples, you can just go look at what other teams have done. A lot of the highest scoring teams actually release their code online, so you can actually take a look and see how what their thought process was. And that's pretty much it.
So, what's some just like a final advice that you would give everyone at home that wants to try Java for the first time?
I'd say my biggest advice is just to persevere, because Java it seems really daunting to learn, and it honestly is. But as long as you just kind of persevere, just like work through it a little bit every day, you can you'll slowly get to understand it. And then once you have like a good enough grasp, you can kind of look at what other people have done with it, and you can see how they kind of go through and what how do they kind of overcame challenges.
Okay, then I guess we'll wrap things up there. Thank you so much, Andrew, for joining us and helping out with this. And thank you so much for watching, and we will see you all next time.